This is a Ted Bundy special, Confessions of a Killer.
Tonight, we go in-depth on one of America's most notorious serial killers.
He said to me once in a letter, he said, "Ann, there's nothing wrong with my life that reincarnation couldn't improve upon."
Ted Bundy.
Don't shake your finger at me, young man. Don't shake your finger at me, young man.
From how he hunted his prey to the day he was executed, witnesses break their silence about a man who has left a trail of tears.
Ted Bundy killed 100 people, for example, just for mathematical simplicity. There were probably 10 to 15,000 people that he affected.
But critical new evidence could link more murders to Ted Bundy.
So at this point, we kind of have a second eye going over it and seeing what kind of physical evidence is there to maybe address with 2018 science.
And tonight, we're hearing from a woman who is finally ready to talk about her terrifying ride with a man named Ted.
I'm more than lucky. I just thank God I'm alive every day.
And good evening, I'm Dave Wagner. Ted Bundy confessed to dozens of murders before his execution, but the investigation didn't end with his death. Tonight, an ongoing push to solve old crimes that could be connected to the serial killer. Right now, critical clues may be in the hands of police, and investigators want to use new technology to examine old evidence from 2 crime scenes.
Because people have got to know whether or not their president is a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
In 1974, while the country was consumed with Watergate, the bodies of young women were turning up in the landscape of the Pacific Northwest, and investigators believe there are more than Ted Bundy confessed to killing.
I find it very hard to believe that he just happened to confess to the exact number he's responsible for.
Inside the vast files of Bundy evidence in King County, we found this film from the summer of '74, a Rainier Brewing Company picnic with Ted Bundy's Volkswagen in plain view. It was the same day Bundy kidnapped and killed Janice Ott and Denise Naslund at the park.
They handcuffed her and put her in the passenger side of the car and drove away.
Bundy's trail of terror in 1974 led him to young women on Washington college campuses. Among his targets, UW student Georgianne Hawkins. As Hawkins walked in an alley near Greek Row, Bundy walked with crutches, pretending to need her help carrying his briefcase. In an interview with Washington investigators, Bundy described how he hit Hawkins with a crowbar and put her inside his VW Bug.
She was unconscious, but she was very much alive.
Like many of his victims, Bundy maintained he dismembered and dumped Hawkins somewhere near Issaquah, but she's never been found.
I think he's responsible for additional murders. Certainly he's responsible for additional crimes like rapes, probably kidnappings, attempted rapes, attempted murders.
At least 5 decades after Bundy's trail of terror began, investigators are still working to solve some of his crimes.
Well, actually, Ted Bundy is the reason that I got into law enforcement in the first place.
Tacoma Police cold case detective Lindsay Wade has a photo of Ted Bundy hanging over her desk.
He's definitely a motivator for me. In my job, and he's really the worst of the worst. He's, the most frightening kind of offender.
These binders contain evidence in the unsolved disappearance of 8-year-old Anne Marie Burr, who was kidnapped from her Tacoma home in 1961. Her body has never been found. Among the prime suspects, then 14-year-old Ted Bundy, who also lived in Tacoma. He repeatedly denied any involvement.
And if we don't get an answer, we'll just have to keep going on and pray and hope somehow we will someday know.
In 2011, in an effort to solve additional crimes, Detective Wade worked to develop a DNA profile of Bundy.
Ted Bundy, of course, is one of the most notorious serial killers in U.S. history. And so it was shocking to find out that a multi-state killer would not be in a national database to connect unsolved homicides.
Despite confessing to 11 murders in western Washington, Bundy was never convicted in this state. And that means his DNA profile is only in the national database, not Washington's.
It seems like common sense that maybe he would be in our state database, given the fact that he was a serial killer in our state.
As a result, some forensic evidence that could provide answers in solving Bundy crimes may not get tested.
The problem with these cases is some of these, who knows where these cases are, and a lot of them are just sitting on a shelf in small agencies that nobody's pulled down for 20 years.
Cloyd Steiger leads the Washington Attorney General's cold case unit and says he knows of 1 or 2 police agencies currently working suspected Bundy cases.
Do you believe they are actively pursuing a DNA connection right now to Ted Bundy?
I believe some detectives are.
Before he was executed in 1989, Ted Bundy's mother wondered what had happened to the boy she raised in Tacoma.
The son we raised was a wonderful, good person. We don't understand what has happened to him. We might not ever get an explanation.
Washington investigators hope some answers may be revealed in the blood and crime scene evidence that Bundy left behind.
Is there any chance that these unsolved murders could be solved?
Well, certainly some of them could be. The ones that have physical evidence that's never been tested or never been tested recently because of the advances of DNA technology.
I still remember Ted Bundy as a 23-year-old.
Ann Rule worked with Ted Bundy at the Seattle Crisis Center and wrote what's considered the definitive Bundy biography. She speaks about the moment Florida investigators asked Bundy if it was accurate that he had killed 36 young women.
He reportedly replied, "Add 1 digit to that and you'll have it." Was he being sarcastic, or did he mean 37 murders? Or did he mean 136 murders? Or did he mean 360 murders?
3 decades after his execution, investigators hope they're getting closer to an answer for those still reeling from the pain.
Ted Bundy was an animal that destroyed lives and left a wake of destruction everywhere he went. So if Ted Bundy killed 100 people, for example, just for mathematical simplicity, there were probably 10,000 to 15,000 people that he affected.
We should mention there were fingerprints found at the scene of that murder in Seattle's Queen Anne neighborhood that don't match Ted Bundy. But we're told by investigators that many people, including a news photographer, were allowed into that crime scene, which wasn't uncommon in 1966. And that's why investigators hope DNA technology developed in the last few years might reveal whether Ted Bundy was involved. Shortly before his execution and after more than a decade of denial, Bundy confessed to dozens of homicides in 7 different states between 1974 and 1978. At the time of his execution in 1989, Anne Marie Burr had been missing for nearly 3 decades. There were no suspects, no motive, and no body. The case grew cold and remained that way until Ted Bundy came into the spotlight in the 1970s.
When the girls were killed in Seattle, that's when we started to think, well, you know, he's from Tacoma.
Anne Marie's disappearance was treated as an abduction from the beginning. But as execution day approached, Anne Marie's parents zeroed in on Bundy as the only suspect.
If he would be executed tomorrow without an answer, I would just feel grateful that he has confessed to what he has. And if we don't get an answer, we'll just have to keep going on and pray and hope somehow we will someday know.
It is worth noting here that Bundy denied any involvement in Anne Marie's disappearance, but many people believe she was his first victim. Anne Marie's case remains unsolved.
I have passed a point of no return. I have struggled and lost for the last time. No more illusions. The terrible nightmare has run its course.
That was Ann Rule more than 2 years before Bundy's execution. Over the years, the former crime writer had received more than 60 letters from Bundy. The letters and their friendship ended when she wrote this book in 1979. The Stranger Beside Me recounts her relationship with one of the nation's most prolific serial killers.
And even though my rational mind says there never was such a person, I still remember Ted Bundy as a 23-year-old, smiling, empathetic, sympathetic young man. The monster Ted who killed, I know, has to go. He is so manipulative. He is such a master at escape that it would be only a matter of time until he did escape again.
At the time, Rule believed that Bundy committed murders in Florida because he knew that state would make him pay for his crimes with his life. She believed he subconsciously wanted to die in the electric chair without revealing anything about his murders or himself.
Knowing Ted as I do, I think he will go to the chair with such stoicism and such hauteur, and as if I'm still in control. You can kill me and I'll still be in control. This was a game. This has always been partially a game with the police, I think. But there will be a closure of a kind. Ted will be gone, and he said to me once in a letter, which is ironic now, he said, "Ann, there's nothing wrong with my life that reincarnation couldn't improve upon."
Bundy confessed to many murders he wasn't charged with, thanks in large part to Detective Robert Keppel, who saw through Bundy's lies.
You have time and patience. I think that those are two good words. You can't hope to drag it out of a guy overnight, okay? And you can't get frustrated if he doesn't give it to you all at once in one piece, because and you have to be content with slowly learning about what kind of person is this. It's not like anybody's going to trick him into talking about it or pressure him into talking about it.
That was Bundy talking about himself in the third person moments before confessing to a killing. In an attempt to bargain for his life, Bundy delivered details about the murders of Georgianne Hawkins and others. Bundy told Keppel he found Hawkins walking in an alley near the University of Washington around midnight, using crutches as a ploy. Bundy pretended to need help carrying his briefcase. She walked with him to an unlit parking lot.
What happened was I knocked her unconscious with the crowbar.
Where do you have that?
By the car. And then there were some handcuffs there along with the crowbar, and I handcuffed her and put her in the passenger side of the car and drove away. Well, she was she was unconscious, but she was very much alive.
Keppel says Bundy and his attorney teased investigators with information about unsolved crimes and called Bundy's confessions some of the last of the killer's great manipulations.
I think the best thing that happened that made him talk and say what he did was the fact that that governor wouldn't listen to anybody. And without that, if there would have been one hint that the governor would waver, he would certainly not have said a darn word to anybody.
Still to come, newly obtained evidence, missing women, and a look inside the mind of one of America's most prolific serial killers. We share exclusive footage of Ted Bundy stalking his victims before a murder spree. And for the first time, a local woman tells her terrifying story of being kidnapped by the killer.
You're watching a Ted Bundy special, Confessions of a Killer. This is a Ted Bundy special, Confessions of a Killer.
Tonight, we showed it to you first. Video of the stalking before a mass murder spree. Ted Bundy parked in this car and preparing to kill.
I knew that was my life flashing in front of me.
And a woman kidnapped by Bundy breaks her silence.
When he said, "Don't even go there, you're never getting out of here."
Ted Bundy confessed to 40 killings across the country before he was executed. But Washington investigators are taking a new look at old crimes that could be connected to Bundy. It has been 3 decades since he was executed, and for the first time, a Washington woman who says she was kidnapped by Bundy is sharing her terrifying story.
And I still can see him.
It is a voice you've never heard.
Did you feel like you might die?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
And film you've never seen. One of America's most notorious serial killers.
Ted Bundy was a charming man. He wasn't a charming man. That was a facade.
Stalking his next victims at a Lake Sammamish picnic.
He's not what people imagine, a sexual predator, serial killer looks like.
And a woman who says she's finally ready to talk about her terrifying ride with a man named Ted.
When he said, "Don't even go there, You're never getting out of here. I knew that was my life flashing in front of me.
It has been 46 years since Otria Kritsonis last journeyed down this stretch of road.
It sure has changed a lot with all the new buildings.
But the memories of a snowy Seattle day in 1972 are clear and haunting.
He was dressed real nice, and his hair was kind of wavy, and he had dark eyes. Handsome looking.
It was in this area. This has all been changed, but it was right here.
So Tria was 22 and says she'd waited nearly an hour for a city bus to take her to classes in Renton.
Car pulled up to the curb, rolled down the window and said, "Hello, young lady, are you waiting for the bus?" And he goes, "Well, I've come down Rainer Avenue and that's a long ways and there's not a bus in sight. Would you like a ride?"
In the 70s, in relatively safe Seattle, the handsome young man seemed more friendly than foreboding.
So you hopped in his car not thinking it was going to be a problem at all?
No, I thought how happy I am now. I'm in a warm car and I get to where I'm going.
As the Volkswagen Bug took off down Rainier Avenue South, so Tria said it quickly became clear. This would be no ordinary ride, and this was no good Samaritan. It was Ted Bundy.
Right about here, everything changed. He started, reaching under the seat, started yelling at me, "Why did you take this ride? Why did you even think about taking this ride?
You're never going to make it to the school." And I thought, wow.
You were thinking about jumping out.
Yes.
Why didn't you?
I couldn't. There was no handle.
No handle on the door?
No handle on the door at all, nope.
So Tria would soon learn it might be hair, not heroics, that could save her life. Many young women did not escape Ted Bundy, and some of their bodies were dumped here in remote areas of Issaquah. Others have never been found. It's also a place investigators believe Bundy trolled for more victims. It was the summer of '74, and employees of Rainier Brewing Company were enjoying their annual company picnic at Lake Sammamish State Park. In evidence never seen by the public until now, this film reveals how a day of fun became fertile ground for Ted Bundy to target his next victims. His Volkswagen Bug, seen here, offered a front row seat to watch women. That same day, in broad daylight, Bundy abducted Janice Ott and Denise Naslund from the park within 4 hours of each other.
The Lake Sammamish cases where once he got them in the car, he would quickly hit them in the head with a tire iron or beat them in a tire iron. That was kind of his M.O.
Film shows police on scene to investigate the women's disappearance, with Bundy's car still in the background. The bodies of Ott and Naslund weren't found until 2 months later, dumped in a wooded area about 2 miles away.
Or you're not going to go to your destination.
Back in that VW Bug,
I was sobbing and praying and, pleading for my life practically. Don't do anything, don't harm me.
So Tria says Bundy was driving her south on I-5 toward Tukwila.
You should have never taken this ride and shut the up.
She says Bundy's beratement led to a bizarre demand.
He goes, "Take your hat off." And I said, "What do you mean take my hat off, my stocking cap off? What for?" I took my hat off and he saw that something was different about me. And he goes, "Why did you cut your hair?" I thought, why did I cut my hair?
I keep thinking, did he stalk me? Did he see me somewhere? Was he waiting for me or was he watching me?
He says, "Well, put that hat back on." And then he said, "Shut the up," and he's yelling at me, "You're never gonna make it."
He may have been involved in the rape murders of 36 women, all young and all with long brown hair.
So Tria speculates the hair that she had cut a week earlier may have saved her life.
He could have killed me. It was just thank God I had gotten my hair cut that I probably wouldn't be talking to you today.
An hour into her odyssey, so Tria says Bundy dropped her off in front of her school, shoving her to the ground and reminding her of just how lucky she was.
Yeah, so that's when I realized I was a lucky lady.
So Tria says she told her family about the man, but not police.
I didn't talk about it because I was a little bit embarrassed about it.
He was attractive, intelligent, and able to charm women and men alike.
It wasn't until a year and a half later, while watching TV, that Tria says she realized she'd been picked up by a suspected serial killer.
I knew 100% that was the guy, yeah.
The Bundy evidence files we examined here in King County are expansive.
I think he's responsible for additional murders.
And Cairo 7 has learned that homicide investigators with the Washington Attorney General's office are taking a new look at who else Bundy may have targeted. Seattle police investigators are re-examining evidence from this crime in 1966.
You have to keep your eyes open and say, what about Bundy? Is that a possibility?
While working at this Safeway in Queen Anne, Bundy is suspected of bludgeoning 2 flight attendants in their nearby apartment. Lonnie Trumbull died. Her roommate suffered permanent memory loss. Bundy never confessed to the crime.
At this point, we kind of have a second eye going over it and seeing what kind of physical evidence is there to maybe address with 2018 science.
Ted Bundy was executed in a Florida prison. His ashes were spread over the Cascade Mountains, not far from where he created so much havoc and heartache. And nearly 3 decades later, some of the answers to Bundy's past remain buried in the landscape of the Pacific Northwest.
The families deserve answers to what happened to their loved one.
A place of grandeur, grief, and gratitude.
You must feel lucky. You are a woman who survived Ted Bundy.
That I am. I'm more than lucky. I just thank God I'm alive every day.
When it comes to the bludgeoning and murder of those 2 flight attendants in Seattle's Queen Anne neighborhood, homicide investigators say there are similarities to the way Bundy killed 2 women at the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University. With improved forensic technology, the hope is detectives might be able to solve that Seattle crime. Coming up next, execution day for Ted Bundy. Hear from witnesses who were inside the death chamber as one of America's most notorious serial killers says his final words.
I don't want to die. I'm not going to kill you. I'll kill you now. I deserve certainly the most extreme punishment society has, and I do.
This is a Ted Bundy special, Confessions of a Killer. You're watching a Ted Bundy special, Confessions of a Killer.
There'll be correctional officers with him right now. They'll be preparing him for execution. They should begin shaving his head and so forth within a few minutes.
January 24th, 1989, Ted Bundy was executed in the electric chair at the Florida State Prison. Witnesses signed in and climbed into prison vans for the short drive to the death chamber. Across the street, hundreds, both for and against Bundy's execution, gathered.
I can see as much as I can see if nobody does.
Carrying signs and sharing their opinions. Some came in costume. A much smaller group gathered to pray.
Ted's a heinous criminal. He should have been executed a long time ago.
I'm afraid that the lesson we're giving our youth is that when we don't like something or someone, we kill it. And I'm here to say that there's another message.
At 7 a.m., witnesses left the execution chamber and told the crowd Ted Bundy was dead.
I'd like you to give my love to my family and friends. That was it. And then they put a black hood or a black hood over his head, a veil, and he was electrocuted. And off to your left, you could see a black hooded executioner. You can only see the eyes, a little slit in the wall on the left-hand side of the room, and you just see the eyes peering out. And a nod is given to the executioner, and he's executed. He kind of lurched back in his chair. His fist went back like that. It seemed maybe they gave him 2,000 volts for a minute or so.
And as the crowd roared its approval, Ted Bundy and the people who waited so long to see him dead said their final goodbyes.
In January, Netflix debuted a new multi-part documentary called Conversations with a Killer, the Ted Bundy tapes.
My name is Ted Bundy.
If you watch, you'll notice that much of the footage is pulled from the Cairo 7 archives, including the first part of the docu-series preview. The footage is also used in a CNN documentary expected later this year.
I've never spoken to anybody about this.
In the 1970s, Cairo 7's Bundy footage was recorded on film and video cassettes. That film includes a conversation with Bundy behind bars, live reports from Florida, where Cairo 7 sent a reporter, and details of his arrests and escapes. In 2018, Cairo 7 finalized a partnership with the University of Washington Special Collections to preserve and digitize archival footage, and those recordings can be used for educational purposes and viewed at UW by researchers. Producers creating the documentaries for Netflix and CNN contacted UW, where researcher Hannah Palin spent hours finding Cairo 7 footage that you'll now see in both. Cairo 7 retains the rights to the footage and licensed it. Lizzie McGlynn, an archival producer for the Netflix documentary, wrote to Palin, "The Cairo 7 archival has been an enormous asset to tell an in-depth story, as have other holdings in the university collections." She goes on to say, "You have been exceptionally helpful and offered me some fantastic material that will be vital to our story." And thank you for watching this Ted Bundy special, Confessions of a Killer. I'm Dave Wagner. Good night.
You're watching a Ted Bundy special, Confessions of a Killer.